I want to talk to you about one of the darkest days in American history, 9/11, the day where almost 3,000 Americans tragically lost their lives and were murdered. Americans like Kristen Lai Hansen, the 2-year-old girl who was murdered on 9/11. Americans like Melissa Doi.
Can you stay calm with me, okay? I understand.
I think there is fire because it's very hot.
Okay.
It's very hot everywhere on the floor.
Okay. I know you don't see it, and I know, but I'm going to document. I'm documenting what you say, okay? And it's very hot. We see no fire, but you see smoke, right?
It's very hot. I don't see any air anymore.
Okay.
All I see is smoke.
Okay, dear. I'm so sorry. Hold on stay calm with me. Stay calm. Now, listen. The call is in. I'm documenting. I'm going to let this... Hold on 1 second, please.
I'm gonna die, aren't I?
No.
I'm gonna die.
Ma'am, say your prayers. And we're gonna think positive because you gotta help each other get off the floor. Now, stay calm. You're doing a good job, ma'am. You're doing a good job.
It's so hot. I'm burning up. Can you?
I already did that.
Stay on the line with me, please.
Yes, ma'am. I am going to stay
I'm
with you.
dying.
Americans like Kevin Cosgrove.
Lady, there's three of us in this office. We're not ready to die, but it's getting bad.
I understand that. We can all the apparatus there. I'm trying to let them know where you are.
Amplifier, sir. There's smoke. News there. 105, 2 power. All right, sit tight. We'll get to you as soon as we can. There's some staying up, but the smoke's really bad, man. That's all we need. That's all we can do. Where are you? What's you guys up to? We're getting there. Doesn't feel like it, man. I got young kids. I understand that, sir. We're on the way.
You have everything, sir.
I know you do, but it doesn't seem like it. You got lots of people up here.
I understand.
I know you got a lot in the building, but we're up on the top. Smoke rises, it's really big. We're on the floor, we're in a window. And then we have to be in green now. Can't see. Thank God the blow was in from the west. Does anybody else want to try in here? These young men, we're not ready to die. I think I'm all right. I called and said I was leaving the building. I was fine, and bang. Hello? We're looking at the financial center. Three of us, 2 broken windows. Oh, God!
And Americans like Brian Sweeney.
Airplane that's been hijacked. If things don't go well, it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So have a good time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you. And I'll see you later. Hi, babe. Hope I call you.
We're going to be going over some very touchy subjects today. And I'm going to try to be respectful to all the victims of 9/11 and their families, but I also want to tell the truth, and I'm going to do so even though I know it's going to offend people. We have much American history of America lying to its people, whether that be the Kennedy assassination, Unit 731, the Bay of Pigs, Operation Northwoods. We have a long history of our government lying to us and deceiving us. So first, I would like to talk about the idea that what we've all heard. Jet fuel doesn't melt steel. Jet fuel has no ability to melt steel beams. Now, the official story is in Tower 7. Even though the steel didn't melt, it was heated up by the fire so hot that it became weak. And then, according to the official story, a buckling failure from column 79 caused the whole building to implode and collapse. However, if this was true, that column 79 buckled, which caused the whole building to collapse in a domino effect, then Why does it look like a controlled demolition? Tower 7 looks like a controlled demolition. In fact, it looks much more like a global demolition where all of the beams are detonated at the same time. We've had many cases of buildings catching on fire, whether that be in 1977 with the Meridian Plaza in Philadelphia, had an 8-floor fire that burned for 18 hours. That building never collapsed. In 1988, the First Interstate Bank building in Los Angeles had a fire that started on the 12th floor. That building never collapsed. In 2017, the Grenfell Tower in London burned for over 24 hours, and that building didn't collapse. How could the Twin Towers, the towers, fall at the speed of gravity? They fell at the rate of gravity. They fell at free falling speed. If you dropped a billiard ball from the top of one of the towers, the speed it would take for it to hit the ground is the same speed they came down. This is something you only find in controlled demolitions. Another question is, why was there so much dust surrounding the explosions? There was dust everywhere, and that's something you only get from a lot of little explosions next to the concrete. One big centralized explosion wouldn't cause that much dust. With the support of a group called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Professor Leroy Housley of University of Alaska at Fairbanks conducted an independent study whose findings released in 2020. Professor Hewley found that office fires of the kind in Building 7 on 9/11 could not have produced sufficient thermal expansion to cause the crucial girder to fail. It's impossible. He found, and more significantly, he and his team found that NIST's explanation does not account for what anyone can see on video. A group of scientists collected and tested for samples of dust and debris collected by Manhattan residents about 10 minutes after the collapse of the Second World Trade Center tower to the next day, and a fourth about a week later. In 2009, they published the results of their study in the Open Chemical Physics Journal. In those samples, the scientists found distinctive red-gray chips full of highly energetic and thermatic material. In other words, they found traces of explosive compounds. Another interesting thing is that the explosion was powerful. The explosion of the planes was powerful enough to destroy the plane's black boxes, but it wasn't powerful enough to destroy the passports of these terrorists. Why is that? For those who don't know, the black box is a special recording device in planes that lets you listen to what's happening in the plane. Now, so we don't have black boxes from 9/11 because, according to the story, the explosion was so powerful that the black boxes were destroyed. But we do have passports from the terrorists that were found. So this is something I find very interesting. Why would the explosion be powerful enough to destroy the black boxes, but be soft enough to destroy the passports? That sounds like a very fortunate coincidence for the US government. The debris was shipped to China immediately after, which is why a thorough investigation could not be conducted. Every invasion starts with a false flag. The Spanish-American War, USS Marine, the Iraq famine, the Naira testimony, the Gulf of Tonkin for the Vietnam War. Every single war has started with a false flag. 9/11 was extremely successful for George W. Bush. It gave him a 90% approval rating. something almost unheard of in previous presidents. A right-wing think tank that included Dick Cheney and other members of the Bush administration staff openly wrote that they wanted a new Pearl Harbor to justify increased military presence in the Middle East. The Empire State Building was also hit by a plane, and it never collapsed. The BBC said that Tower 7 fell before it fell. A BBC reporter claimed that Tower 7 had fallen when it was still up, meaning that they gave their report too early. If you look at the hole in the Pentagon, it does not look like the hole from a plane at all. It hardly looks like a plane hit the Pentagon at all. The primary targeted section of the Pentagon was in charge of financial records. It happened a day after a meeting about irresponsible spending. They also suppressed physical evidence themselves. There were other buildings closer to the Twin Towers and a building in between Tower 7, but yet those buildings didn't fall. It was only Tower 7 that collapsed. The Office of Management was destroyed in Tower 7. The Office of Management just happened to be in Tower 7, which is the office in charge that would have been in charge of investigating 9/11. How convenient. They did everything to stop an actual investigation of 9/11. John Ashcroft quit flying commercial planes that summer. $2 trillion went missing from the Pentagon a few days before 9/11. The Twin Towers were designed to sustain a jet impact. Here's another question I have that I'm thinking about. How could one man in a cave in the middle of a desert and a few dozen guys with box cutters take down the US plane system, a system that the Soviet Union wasn't able to take down? Are we really supposed to believe that? Here is the truth. Osama bin Laden did not do 9/11. Al-Qaeda did not do 9/11. Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda were innocent. Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda were framed. So, given this fact, why do we have an interview with Al Jazeera where Osama bin Laden claimed that he did 9/11? So, I am going to be honest. I don't know. Could this have been an actor playing Osama bin Laden, pretending to be him, that faked the interview? It absolutely could have been. Could Osama bin Laden have been taking credit for something he didn't do because he hoped that by doing so it would help him spread his message? This is another possibility. For example, ISIS claimed that they were responsible for the Las Vegas shooting, the biggest mass shooting in America ever. But it's largely believed that ISIS had no connection to this mass shooting, and they were just taking credit for it anyways to try to get attention and recognition. But either way, whatever it was, an actor or a lie from Osama bin Laden was innocent and he was framed. So now let's talk about the uncomfortable truth, and the part of this video that's going to get a lot of people to disagree with me. If it wasn't Osama bin Laden, then who was truly responsible for this mass murder of Americans? Larry Silverstein, the Zionist Jewish billionaire, made off with the biggest insurance claim in history, $4.5 billion. It also should be noted that Jewish employees were told not to show up to work on 9/11, the day before the mass murder. We also must talk about the 5 dancing Israelis. 5 Israelis were caught dancing on 9/11 during the mass murdering attacks. These 5 Israelis were arrested for suspicious behavior. They were found to be in possession of box cutting knives, multiple passports, and thousands of dollars. They were later released in an interview they did in Zionist-occupied Palestine. They said they were there to document 9/11, which is odd because how would they know to document it if they didn't know that 9/11 was going to happen?
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11. There are certainly real questions that remain, but there are also real dangers in jumping to conclusions about who to blame.
Benjamin Netanyahu also reacted with quite a bit of happiness over 9/11.
The Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv has reported Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly said the September 11th attacks have been good for Israel. Netanyahu said, quote, "We're benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq." End quote. Netanyahu then reportedly said these events, quote, "swung American public opinion in our favor."
Well, big catastrophe, and I'm Israeli, and I hope that now people understand what we have to deal with, the kind of people that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's just a catastrophe.
It also should be said that Benjamin Netanyahu was one of the main liars claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and was pushing for America to go to war with Iraq.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately. The dangers posed by a nuclear-armed Saddam were understood by my country 2 decades ago, well before September 11th. In 1981, the late Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin, dispatched the Israeli Air Force on a pre-dawn raid that destroyed the Iraqi nuclear reactor at Osirak. This probably took place months away from Saddam's ability to assemble the critical mass of plutonium for the first atomic bomb, or more than one. And today the United States must destroy the same regime because a nuclear-armed Saddam will place the security of our entire world at risk. And make no mistake about it, if and once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. 2 decades ago, it was possible to thwart Saddam's nuclear ambitions by bombing a single installation. But today, nothing less than dismantling his regime will do. Because Saddam's nuclear program has fundamentally changed in those 2 decades. He no longer needs one large reactor to produce the deadly material necessary for atomic bombs. He can produce it in centrifuges the size of washing machines.
So what was the result of 9/11? The Iraq War and the invasion of Afghanistan. What was the Iraq War for? It wasn't for oil. Neither was Afghanistan. Afghanistan also wasn't for opium. They weren't for rare earth minerals either. Those wars were wars for Israel. Every soldier that died in the war on terror died for Israel. So what were the results of 9/11? A Jewish Zionist billionaire made the largest insurance claim ever in history, and we got a war for Israel. So I think it's obvious who truly did 9/11. Not Osama bin Laden, but the evil Jewish elites. For anyone that questions whether they have the power to do this, may I remind you of the recent event of which Israel openly admits to being responsible for, of the Houthis' pagers exploding. And I ask you this, if Israel has the power to make pagers explode in the Houthis' pockets, why wouldn't they have the power to make skyscrapers explode?